Story 1. Some people were telling me to post this story on here as well, so here you go. I have seen a lot of unusual people in my life, but my potential crazy mother-in-law is the absolute worst person I have ever met. I 30-year-old female have been with my boyfriend 31-year-old for 8 months now. For the first few months, everything was amazing. He is the sweetest and most caring man I have ever been with. He likes to surprise me with fun dates and flowers for no apparent reason. The biggest surprise of all, though, was when I met his mother. I met his parents for the first time a few months ago. The first thing crazy mother-in-law said to me when I walked in the door was, "Are you Jewish?" I am not, and I am not particularly religious, but I was raised Catholic. Once I told her this, it was the beginning of the madness. She immediately stopped talking to me and acted as if I didn't exist. I was extremely nervous about meeting my boyfriend's parents, so this broke my heart. I was determined to make a good impression, so I kept trying to connect with her. This was a huge mistake, and I should have just let it go. Once we were all seated for dinner, she finally decided to try and make conversation. I have naturally red hair, and she asked me if my parents have the same color. I told her that I have the same hair as my mother. She then had the audacity to ask me, "Does the carpet match the drapes?" I had no idea how to respond and just sat there stunned. Seeing my reaction, she said, "Don't worry, I will just ask my son about it later." I looked over at my boyfriend, who seemed equally as shocked, but he didn't say anything. She then started to go on about my hair being too curly. She told me that I really need to learn how to run a brush through my hair and think about my appearance more when I am out with her son. Then, when I didn't eat much at dinner, she gave me her version of a compliment. I was told it was good that I am watching what I eat because it would be a shame if I got any bigger. This was just my first meeting with this woman. As soon as I got into my car, I burst into tears until I got home. My boyfriend was texting me and apologizing for his mother's behavior, but the damage was done, and I told him I needed time to think. He went into an apology overload after this. He started sending flowers to my office every day and leaving me messages, begging me to talk to him. I finally agreed, and we went out to dinner. He told me he spoke with his mother about her inappropriate comments, and he swore it would never happen again. With this reassurance, I decided to give it another chance. Fast forward 2 weeks to when he invited me to come to a family birthday party. This time I would also be meeting his sisters and grandparents. His grandparents and sisters are awesome people. They asked me normal questions about my job, family, and friends. His mother seemed to be avoiding me throughout the evening, and honestly, I was okay with that. I went to grab something from my purse and noticed that it was not where I left it. I looked everywhere, but I could not find it. I went and asked my boyfriend, and he began to help me look. He then got a strange look on his face, and he quickly went upstairs. I could then hear a lot of yelling begin upstairs. He came back down holding my purse after a few minutes and told me that we were leaving. Once we got in the car, I asked him what was going on. His mother had taken my purse so that she could see my driver's license. She intended to try and run a background check on me. He told me she had told him this earlier, but honestly, he thought she was joking. I thought that it was best if I avoided any of his family functions for the time being. This worked out great for a while, and he went to any of his family parties alone. He would ask me each time before leaving if I was sure that I didn't want to go, but I always declined. Last week his family had their family reunion, and he asked me to please come with him. I was very reluctant, but considering there would be so many people present, I didn't think she would pull anything. When we got there, everything was going great. I met his extended family and got to catch up with his sisters. His mother did seem to be shooting me death glares all night, but I brushed it off. Soon, she came over and joined a table I was seated at with his sisters and some cousins. The conversation was pleasant as we were talking about his sister's children. His sister has a daughter who is 12 and is the same age as my niece. I then showed his sister a picture of my niece on my phone. His mother took a look at the screen and began to laugh. She told me she hopes that if me and her son ever have children that they don't look like my niece. My niece is beautiful, by the way, and she is only 12 years old. What kind of monster attacks a 12-year-old child's appearance? This was my breaking point, and I went off like a volcano. I started to scream at her and told her she is the most evil person I have ever had the disadvantage to meet. I told her if I ever did have children with her son, she can be certain she will never meet them because heck is too far to travel to. I am not 100% certain exactly everything that I said, but from what his younger sister later said, it was epic. She began to play the victim and wailed that I had just misunderstood her joke. My boyfriend came rushing over at this point, and she threw herself into his arms, telling him I am a horrible woman and he needed to throw me out right now. He told her that wasn't going to happen and to stop making a fool of herself. She seemed to accept this for a moment and sat back down. She just kept sobbing that I just didn't understand how to take a joke. Then something in her snapped as she noticed something that my boyfriend was holding in his hand and began to have another meltdown. I didn't understand what was happening at this point and just stood there watching a grown woman pitch a fit like a toddler. None of what she was saying made any sense to me, as it was mostly just incoherent screaming. But I did pick up on many derogatory comments directed my way. My boyfriend then told me we were leaving and told me to grab my things. As I started to get ready, crazy mother-in-law made a lunge from my boyfriend's hand and grabbed the small box he was holding. She then looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You will never have this ring, you little witch." She ran outside and threw the box down a storm drain. Turns out that my boyfriend was intending on proposing to me. He had just obtained his grandmother's ring while we were at the reunion. His grandmother is completely heartbroken because now her ring is down a storm drain instead of continuing on in the family as she had always wanted. I don't know where to go from here. I am devastated, confused, and exhausted. Can I ask him to never see his mother again? Is that my place to say something like that? I am sorry that my story is so long, but I really needed to get this rant off my chest. Story 2. So today, I had to take my dog to the vet for her semi-annual blood test. She absolutely loves going to the vet and was super excited to go play with all the techs. Afterwards, we walked to the pet store just down the street because she's definitely on the nice list and deserves a new toy for Christmas. Now my dog is an Akita, so she's pretty big, and I understand that she's a little scary looking. She's also super gentle and seems to understand that kids especially can be intimidated by her. So when she sees new people, she won't run up to them, but she will get excited and start wagging her tail, which is adorable because it's a curly cinnamon roll. As a result, I don't feel the need to do anything like pull her away from scared people. I honestly think that it only makes things worse because she'll always wait for them to come up to her anyway. So we walk into the store, and it's pretty quiet. We are just heading towards dog toys, and my dog is laser focused on the table of treats. A mom and her kid walk past, and he points to my dog and calls it a wolf. Her face is all black, and she's big enough that this isn't really a stretch. The mom then stopped me, and the following conversation happened. "Lady, excuse me, that breed is banned. You can't bring it in here." Me, "I'm pretty sure the store doesn't have a banned breed list. It's a pet store." "Lady, that's a wolf hybrid, and it's scaring my kid. You need to leave." Me, "I'm sorry your kid is afraid of dogs, but she's not a wolf hybrid, and she's not bothering you." This whole time, we're still standing next to the treat table, so the dog hasn't moved an inch closer to them. She's just staring at the food with her tail wagging. "Lady, my son is scared. You two need to leave." Me, "No." At this point, my dog decided that these must be new friends. She took a step towards them with her tail still wagging at top speed. She stretched her head towards them, though they were still 2 or 3 feet away, to ask for pets, and the kid was just frozen staring. The mother just picked up her kid and walked the other way. I just grinned, and we went to look at dog toys. When I went to check out, the cashier told me the lady had complained about my wolf hybrid, and they had to tell her that all dogs who aren't acting aggressively are more than welcome in the store. The lady was ignored, and my good girl got 2 treats from the nice worker. Not a very climactic or crazy story, but I was amused that some unusual lady thought a dog shouldn't be in a pet store. Story 3. As a kid, I would often be working at my dad's workplace. He was an off-premise caterer and an event planner and would often be hired to put together lavish wedding parties. Huge feasts, cheese and fruit tables 40 feet long, lots of wine, sometimes multiple pigs for both an afternoon and an evening roast, lots of fancy people wanting fancy parties. paying a ton of money and expecting the world to revolve around them. One event, in particular, stood out because when the bride-to-be and her mother came in to go over details, they had some rather heated disagreements over some really trivial things. My dad would just sit there quietly, not taking sides, and patiently wait for people to work out the differences. But one argument came to an interesting and final conclusion. The mother of the bride was arguing about the specific shade the decorative ribbons and icing trim on the cake should be. Up until that point, she had proven herself incapable of letting her daughter have the final say in anything, from the menu to the plate garnishes, to the time the meal was to start. The mother was insisting that she have her way on everything. The daughter was gritting her teeth and just grinding through it. But when her mother started to fuss about the exact shade of off-light green, "No, that's too light, no, that's too dark," the bride snapped. She loudly and firmly stated, "Mother, if you don't knock it off right this instant, I am going to disinvite you from the wedding. This is my day, and while I value your input, the decisions will be mine." She then turned to my dad, looked him squarely in the eyes, and said, "I will be signing your check. You work for me. Nothing is decided until I say so. If my mother tries to plan or change anything, you are to call me immediately. I do not expect you will have any problems with that." My dad simply said, "Not at all," and they got back to planning the wedding. Story 4. Back in 2014, my mother walked out on my dad because she decided my entitled sister was more important than her marriage or the rest of the family. Over the years, there have been countless entitled parent moments from her. But today's story is about my dad, who I love dearly, but he had his own entitled episode yesterday, and I am still fuming over it. Ever since my mother walked out, she has been trying to get my dad to let her and the sister back into the house to live. Not because she wants to repair the relationship, but because she just wants to not have to be an adult and pay rent. Now, a little over 6 months ago, she went to a property lawyer and got them to put an application in to change the house from joint tenants to tenants in common with a 50-50th share. Dad, in his typical fashion, completely ignored the letters from the lawyers and my advice that he counter-offer her 50-50th claim with a 75-25th claim, as there are 4 of us kids, and it would ensure that if Dad dies before my mother both are in their 70s, we would each get a 1/4 share of the house. But now he stuck his head in the sand and did nothing, sprouting on about how he can write a will that says the 3 of us get the house and this sister gets $100. I tried to tell him that's not how it works, but he didn't listen. Now last month, my mother has filed for divorce, and as part of the settlement, as neither parent has money to buy out the other, and the tenancy wasn't changed, the house needs to be sold. I am pretty sure that Dad is not going to have anywhere even remotely close to enough funds to buy another house. Not even a tiny one. After all the years he worked his butt off to pay for the place, he's going to end up losing it. My mother did not contribute financially to the mortgage at all and, in fact, almost caused the house to be foreclosed on at least twice that I know of before Dad paid it off with his retirement fund. Anyhow, onto the entitled part that has me fuming. I've waffled on enough. My partner and I have worked our butts off growing our business and are pretty comfortable money-wise. We aren't rich, but we don't have to worry if an unexpected bill shows up, or we don't work for 2 weeks. Got a call yesterday from Dad, and he told me the lawyers said that he could buy my mother out so he could keep the house. But obviously, being in his 70s and retired, he wouldn't get a new mortgage on the house, so he wanted myself and my 2 brothers to get one to buy her out. Now one of my brothers' credit is terrible, and he will never get a loan. He has court-ordered debt payments, and he doesn't even pay them, so it would fall onto me and the other brother. I flat out refused, as I am not going to put myself into more debt. I have my own mortgage only to see the money go to that vile woman, in a house that I would lose money on. It has termite damage, renovations that no council approved, and is generally just a dump of a house, and frankly, it would be cheaper to knock it down and rebuild it than to repair it. Also, I would be paying off a mortgage on a property that I wouldn't get any return on, as my dad and first brother that lived there wouldn't pay me rent to cover the mortgage. But I'm the bad guy now because I won't make my life harder because he didn't want to listen to the advice he was given 6 months ago.